Most of us in the United States have been experiencing a pretty brutal winter storm this week. So I just wanted to check in with you guys, see what's going on with you, make sure everybody's okay, and also tell you what's been going on with us, because it has been quite a ride, and we're still on it, so stay tuned. Hi YouTube, Autumn Beckman here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My channel is all about luxury living on a budget, from high-end luxury handbags and small goods to the everyday luxuries of life. If that sounds interesting to you, please make sure you subscribe, click the bell notification icon to be notified when I post new videos, and be sure to like the videos that you enjoy. And one of the perks of subscribing to my channel is you get to see my community post on your YouTube homepage, where I post deals, discount codes, sales, and rare finds related to these beautiful things we love. So we knew this winter storm was coming, and we were able to prepare some. We were able to stock up on food, we already had a stock of water, and we did a few other things to prepare. We didn't realize what we were about to be in store for. I think the storm hit our part of the country. We're in Oregon, if you don't know that, a day or two earlier than it hit everybody else, or maybe they were different storms. Our storm hit us on Saturday. So that Friday night, Saturday morning, I woke up several times throughout the night to very strong wind sounds outside. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's the storm coming in. And then when we actually woke up and I looked out the window, the ground was already coated a little bit in some snow. I was about to say that's the first time we've seen snow up here. It's actually not. Last week, we went down to Cannon Beach on the Oregon coast for a night. And to get there from where we are in the Portland area, you have to go through the coastal range, this mountain range that's there. There was snow there, which we had no idea we were heading into when we decided to do that overnight trip. We went because they were having king tides, which are these bigger tides that come in farther. They tend to produce bigger waves, and Paul likes to go take photos of that. So we thought, let's do it, because my light is dimming. Why is my light dimming? That freaks me out a little bit because of the story I'm about to tell you. So we went to Cannon Beach overnight, drove through that snow, and it was snowing on us, and there was, well, it was more like sleet, really. Neither of us have ever driven in snow. Paul was driving, and at one point the car in front of us slid into the oncoming traffic lane and was able to get back, so everybody slowed down at that point. Toward the top of one of the mountains that we were on, somebody's car, something wrong with it. They were out with their fingers up. It was these two women and this giant dog. So we stopped and picked them up and took them to the coast, and then they got a ride elsewhere from there because we were going in different directions at that point. But yeah, so a few things we'd never done, driven in snow, and they weren't really hitchhikers, but we helped people in need and a dog in need. Anyway, so we do that, and all I was trying to say was that was the first time that we'd been in snow in Oregon. So when we woke up Saturday morning and there was snow outside, it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time we'd had snow here where we are. That was a really long way of saying that. Anyway, the winds were still going very strong. This is key. Throughout the day, pretty much the whole day, it was snowing. I use quotes there because it wasn't actually snow most of the time. It was more like a sleet or a hail. I'm not sure which is the correct term. They were these tiny, tiny little spheres of frozen water. They were ice, they were snow, I don't know. But they would hit the windows and bounce, and my light is dimming again. Why? Okay. I'm not going to mention it again. If it does it, just know that that's what's happening. So that Saturday morning, I thought there was a chance that the power could go out. And so I thought, well, what can I do? If the power goes out, I can continue doing it. It'll be fine. And I thought, well, I can film. I was in the middle of filming. I had 4 videos planned, and I was toward the end of the third one. Well, actually in an earlier one, the power had gone out for like 30 seconds and it came right back on. But then in the third video, it went out. I waited for a minute, it didn't come back on. So I kept filming, and you'll see that video at some point. I think it's scheduled to go up next month. But one thing I hadn't realized is I had thought, oh, I can keep filming because my camera uses a battery. It doesn't use electricity. Well, it didn't occur to me, I also use a light, and that uses electricity. So that film will get a little dark. There was still plenty of daylight, so it was fine, but Anyway, that's what I was doing when the electricity went out. That's also why I didn't get my video up on Saturday, because I didn't have electricity to be able to upload, because that was a rare occasion where I was filming Saturday's video on the day of, which I'm also doing today. I'm filming this Thursday video on this Thursday morning. So the electricity stayed off. We had no idea how long it would be off, but we did know that the weather forecast was that the temperatures would be in the teens or low 20s through Tuesday, and keep in mind this was Saturday, so I think at that point it was in the 20s, but the next few days it was like 16 degrees, and we had snow in the forecast for that Saturday, but not the next 2 days. But then Tuesday we're supposed to get more snow and ice, so we thought hopefully the power won't be off that long. Now, one thing you need to know about this part of the country is you would think, you know, being way up in the north part of the country, snow would be a common thing here, but we keep hearing it's not, and that when it does snow here, the city isn't prepared for it. Like, they have some plows, but they don't have enough equipment to go through the whole city necessarily and plow regularly and salt the roads and all that. The cities around here basically just shut down if there's a tiny bit of snow. Part of the reason for that is the landscape here. It's very hilly. We're on little mountains between two mountain ranges. Like, our highest elevations are maybe a little more than 1,000 feet in the Portland area, but so many of the roads around here are on hills, and you're going up and down and you're winding around. When you have hazardous road conditions on top of that kind of landscape, it makes it even more hazardous. So the idea is you just stay at home. So we knew all this, and we thought, well, I hope that people can get out and restore electricity, but we need to be prepared to be without power for a few days, to be prepared to keep ourselves and the animals warm. So one of the first things we decided to do was walk to our storage unit, which is on the opposite side of the property here. We're in an apartment complex. Get some supplies that we had there, especially our Coleman stove with a little propane tank. So we bundled up, and we wanted to do this earlier in the day. The electricity went out around 11, and not long after that we decided, let's go get this thing. Because the longer we waited, the colder it would get, and it was still really warm in the apartment. We keep it around 70 degrees in here, so we knew we would get cold going outside. We wanted to be able to come back and the apartment was still warm and we could warm up more quickly. So let's go get this done, right? So we go over there, and it's sleeting or whatever that is on us, and it stings your face, and we're walking into the wind, so it's blowing right on us, and the ground is a little bit slippery. You're walking in snow that hasn't been shoveled, and again, our property is on hills, so we're going up and down hills. We finally get down there. The key doesn't work to the storage unit. It's this room that has several storage units. You have to have the key to get into the room, and we had complained about this recently, and we were told it was fixed, but we hadn't had a chance to check it yet. So our key didn't work. Luckily, there were two doors, and the second door did work. So we were able to get in, thank goodness, and get a few supplies that we had, including that stove, and then trek back up here. We were also really careful when we did open an exterior door to shut it quickly behind us to try not to let cold air in, because we're trying to preserve whatever heat we did have in the apartment. And we were also careful not to open the refrigerator or the freezer much to preserve the cold inside those spaces. And throughout this first day on Saturday, it stayed relatively warm in the apartment. We did put on layers to help because we knew we were going to need them. So I had like 2 layers and then my bathrobe on top of that and a pair of socks. But we mostly just went about our day as usual, but without electricity. So like, instead of being on my computer working, I got journals out and worked in those. For the dogs, they have sweaters and hoodies, so I put hoodies on them to keep them a little warmer, and they had plenty of blankets they can get under. For Vincent, that's trickier because Vincent of all of us is the most vulnerable. If you don't know, Vincent is my bird. She's an African gray parrot. Her cage is in our what's supposed to be a dining room, but we don't use it as that. And she's surrounded by windows in that room. So I moved her cage into the living room where she wasn't next to windows where it would be colder. So living room, a little bit warmer. She wouldn't get the draft from the windows because there was a draft. It's an older building. It has older windows. They're drafty. I noticed ice starting to form around the inside of the windows. So we moved her big cage into the living room. Later that day, when the electricity still wasn't on and it looked like we were going into the night without electricity, I moved her to her smaller travel cage and just piled that with blankets. So she had about 4 or 5 blankets on top of her to try to keep some of the heat in. And I wanted her in the smaller cage. She's still in it, by the way, because there's still stuff going on outside, and in case the electricity goes out again, I want her to be in that space. But being in the smaller space, I'm just figuring there's less airflow and it's easier to keep a small space warm than it is a large space. Moved her in there, put the blankets on her. Also piled our bed with all the blankets we can find. We pulled all the blankets out of the linen closet, all the comforters, all the throw blankets, even some towels we put down for extra insulation. We probably had 8 layers at least of blankets and towels and things on the bed. Because I figured if we're without heat all night, we're gonna wake up to a pretty cold apartment. So we were. By the time we went to bed that night, it was about 56 degrees in the apartment, so it had dropped from 70 that much. We were making soup on the Coleman stove that night, and we're standing in the kitchen and we just got our layers on, like we're not wearing coats or anything. And I'm thinking, this really isn't that bad. 56 is bearable and we're fine. We've got blankets and everything. It's not so bad. And I was reminded, and Paul and I were talking about this, reminded of the Texas Snowmageddon of 2021 that we had survived 3 years ago. If you're in America, you probably remember hearing about this on the news if you didn't live through it yourself, which is where Texas got this huge winter storm that broke the electricity grid. Pretty much nobody in Texas had electricity for several days, and we're all sitting in snow and freezing weather, and we were bundled up. Just, everything was basically the same, and some of the things we did during this storm we knew to do because we had been through that storm. And in that one, Vincent, I had her in her big cage because I didn't have access to the small cage at that time, and I had a bunch of comforters over her, and I put her in my bathroom. It was 4 days that time that we were without electricity. My bathroom was the only room in that entire apartment that was completely interior. So there were no windows, there were no exterior doors, so it was the warmest room in the apartment. Not that it was warm, but it was the warmest in the apartment. So I put her in there and had the blankets, and we had no electricity, so there were no lights. And I wasn't going to leave like a lit candle in there. So she was in pitch dark for 4 days that time. And we don't have a totally interior room in this apartment, so having her in the living room was as good as any place else. And she was kind of in the middle. She was up against the wall that's between the living room and the kitchen. So she was as central as she could be, as far away from windows and doors as she could be. So just fingers crossed that she would be okay, and she is. So 56 degrees when we go to bed that night. The next morning we wake up and the temperature's in about the mid-40s in the apartment. Still no electricity, and it was cold enough inside at this point that we just opened the refrigerator door and left it open because it was about the same temperature. We took what was in the freezer and put it on our back porch in a cooler because it would stay frozen out there. And in fact, outside was colder than the freezer. The freezer and fridge were kind of warm at that point. I was surprised, since we hadn't opened the freezer at all. I was surprised it was warm and it hadn't retained more cold. And then we still don't know how long the electricity is going to be off. At this point, we're able to communicate a little bit. We've been trying not to use our phones, not using the computers at all because we don't have internet anyway, but trying not to use our phones too much. We let people know that we didn't have electricity, but I do want to give a big thank you to Jill, who I was texting a lot that morning especially, and she's over in the East Coast. She was fine. I don't think the winter storm had hit her yet. So she was using her electricity and internet to do some sleuthing for us and give us some news on what was happening, because we didn't really have access without, going on the phone and bringing up websites and using the phone battery. But then the phones, if you were on the internet, or even texting, was going really slow because nobody around us had electricity either, so everybody's using their phones, and that just slows the system down. So what I found out from Jill and her research was that the reason we didn't have electricity was not because power lines had been knocked over necessarily from the wind or the snow, but because the wind had knocked down a ton of trees around the area, and those took out power lines. If you're not familiar with the Pacific Northwest, it is very heavily, densely forested. So we have tons of trees around us. It's one of the things we love so much about living here. But a bunch of trees fell down in this storm, damaged power lines, damaged people's houses. So now, at least from this information we got from Jill, we knew what was going on around us, and that gave us a better idea of, oh, it's going to take a while to get the electricity back up, because not only do they have to deal with the power lines, they have to deal with the trees. So we thought that in the daylight hours, at least, we would be able to, sit in bed, stay under the blankets to keep warm, but be able to read or to write. Couldn't do that either. We ended up just having to sit in bed or lay in bed because you couldn't have your hands out from under the blankets for very long because it was too cold. So we just sat there and chatted much of the day. And then when it got dark, we made some more soup on the Coleman stove to warm up a little bit, and then went to sleep. We had some long nights of sleep over these few days. Vincent, that day, I kept the blankets over her the whole day, so she was in darkness again, but I thought it was more important to do what I could to keep her warmer than it was for her to be able to see anything. We were in the same room, so she heard us talking, and she was whistling to us and talking to us, so I knew she was okay. And the dogs, of course, are still in their sweaters and under the blankets. They're fine too. By the way, all those blankets, we were 100% fine under the blankets. We were plenty warm, not the slightest bit cold, except our noses sticking out from under them. I mean, our whole head was sticking out, but like the nose gets colder because you're breathing that cold air in and out. So late that afternoon, the power finally came back on. So we were rejoicing. We jumped up to start doing things. 6 minutes later, it went off. So that was kind of heartbreaking because we were looking forward to the heat. It was getting pretty cold. It was getting, in the lower 40s at this point. And so we were sad and we got back under the blankets. And then it got dark out. We went to sleep. We were just about to go to sleep. It was about 9 o'clock and the power came back on again. And this time we didn't move. We were like, if we get up, it's just going to be cold. There's nothing we need at this point. We're about to go to sleep. So we just stayed under the blankets, not knowing whether the power would stay on or not. Ultimately, it did stay on, and that was Sunday night. Now it's Thursday morning, and it's been on this whole time, even though my light is going in and out, which is really annoying. So we're thinking, great, the heater's on now throughout the apartment. We have several built-in heaters, and so by the time we wake up in the morning, it's going to be nice and warm in here. Oh no, that's not how it works. This is something that was a little surprise. Oh, and that reminds me, before I get into that, let's go back to Sunday. When we went to bed that night, it was 39 degrees in the apartment. And throughout that day, as it got colder and colder inside, we were realizing that things were happening that we hadn't anticipated. For example, before any kind of big storm where you could lose electricity, people were like, get non-perishable foods, right? Like canned foods and whatever else. One of the things we already had that we figured, oh, we can eat this, is pita bread and hummus. What we didn't realize, because we have not lived in winter environments, is that not only do those things get cold, but they start to freeze. So we couldn't have pita bread because it was starting to freeze. Even some of the fruit that I had in the refrigerator, some berries and stuff, that was starting to freeze. And the thing that we definitely hadn't thought about, and we're just not expecting, was really shocked by, is our mattress started to freeze. We have a Tempur-Pedic. Where we were laying, it was nice and warm and seemed like it was pretty normal, but all around us and the space between us, that was hard. Like a Tempur-Pedic mattress, it's memory foam, so when you press on it, it gives. It was giving a tiny bit, but you really had to put all your force on it. We were not expecting that. So we get electricity Sunday night. Monday morning rolls around. We're thinking, oh, we're going to wake up and it'll be nice and warm in the apartment. Oh no. We wake up and I think it was in the 40s. So even with all the heaters on throughout the apartment, it takes a while. It ended up taking a good 24 hours for the apartment to get back to normal in terms of temperature. But we thought, well, at least we have electricity. We can start doing things again, which we did, internet-y stuff and whatever else we needed to do, cooking. I was able to do some laundry and take a shower. And then right after I finished my laundry, Paul started doing his laundry, but the machine was acting weird, and he brought me over. I'd had an experience recently with the machine acting weird and it wouldn't start, and so I was telling him, yeah, this is a thing. And then I went to the kitchen to do something. I was gonna wash a cup maybe, and there was no water, and that's why the washing machine didn't work. So our water was out now. At least we had electricity. It's so much better to be without water than it is without electricity because of the heat factor in this situation. That was Monday. The water went out that morning. Today is Thursday. We still have no water. This is day 4 with no water. And that's because people haven't been able to get here to work on it. The roads have been too dangerous. It's been snowy. Yesterday we had this big ice storm, so the whole city was just covered in a sheet of ice. Our neighbor, when you leave the apartment and walk to where the cars are, it takes maybe 1 minute, if that long. Our neighbor said yesterday he walked to his truck and it took him 15 minutes to get there because he's walking on ice and slipping. And so, I mean, it was a serious ice storm. You couldn't do anything. So they're supposed to have people out here this morning turning the water back on, checking for water leaks, because with no electricity, pipes could have frozen. And then especially with no water, because while the electricity was out, we were at least trickling our water like you're supposed to do. But then when the water went out, you can't do that anymore. So, and we still had 2 days at that point of below freezing weather, like 16 degrees outside. So would not be surprised if there are lots of pipes broken on the property and we may be without water for longer. And that's why I have my hair like this today, because I haven't been able to shower since Monday morning. I mean, we have like wet wipes where we can wipe down, but I haven't been able to wash my hair. And the poor little dogs yesterday in the ice storm, I took them out on the back porch and they go out into the snow and that's covered in ice. So they're both trying to climb up because everything is hilly. They're trying to climb up a little bit and they're just slipping back, and they did get their business done, but it was not pleasant. Barron has been like, we opened the back door to let him out and he's kind of hiding out behind the door and looking, peering out and like, no, I'm not going out there. So you have to pick him up and put him out there, and he does his business very quickly and then he runs back in. Roxy doesn't mind it quite as much. And the worst of it the other day, she was ready to go back in, but she has a lot more fur and she's more adventurous and she doesn't get as cold as quickly as Barron does, so it's easier for her. So that is what's been going on with us in this winter storm. That's why my video schedule has been off, and hopefully we'll get it back to normal starting today. And hopefully we will also get water today, fingers crossed. And it's been too dangerous to drive anywhere else. Like we thought about, oh, we could maybe go to a hotel because we heard that there are hotels that do have electricity and water, but you can't get there. It's too dangerous to drive. So I would love to hear what you have been going through, because so many of you have also been hit with this big storm. Are you okay? Are your loved ones okay? Let me know in the comment section below what your winter storm story is. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you back here next time, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.